meeting you.
Ciao Patrick, Michela.
Michela.
Ciao Michela.
Rob.
Ciao Rob.
Tariq Bell is based in Berlin, right?
She's based in Berlin.
Yeah, she's based in Berlin. Tariq Bell is
And this one is checking out. They're always open to new
Wait, you are the Lutheran expert.
I am.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
Rob lives in Beirut now. Rob lives in Beirut now.
Oh wow.
She
This
was
base
there
you've
in
been naming me
and
so
it's
much.
the other
Check 1, 2, 3.
Perfetto, thank you.
Hi guys! Oh my god, it's so heavy! Yucks!
Iniziamo dopo. Sì, sì, sì. Ciao.
Where are you going?
You can say hi. Hello. Good afternoon. Please, please.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm so excited. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Feel free, folks that are walking in, to grab a seat. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good?
Great.
Yeah. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Harshini, or you can also call me H. I'm here from the Node Institute in Berlin. It's a hub for creative computation, and we kind of monthly organize the TouchDesigner Roundtable. But I'm also wearing a second hat, which is as co-curator for Manifest.io and one of the founders. For those of you who don't know, Manifest.io is a symposium for new media and electronic art. I started it 3 years ago with my co-curator, Basil Naori. And it really started as a way to provide a platform for artists, especially from the global south, especially in Berlin, where it can be quite homogenous, the artistic landscape. So really to emphasize immigrant artists, artists at all stages of their career, and also new media and electronic art that was at the root of social and political discourse. So I'm really excited that this is kind of the first time we've crossed over the pond and are doing a Manifest.io in London, thanks to our co-organizers, Eclectic, and co-curators who are currently doing a fellowship at Goldsmiths, and thanks to the support also of the university and folks like Patrick Hartono and the Department of Computational Arts for making this possible. For those of you in the room, there's an exhibition outside. I encourage you to talk to the artists, to see what their work is about. And we have 2 talks for today's roundtable, and we're also live streaming the first 2 talks. So hello for the live stream audience joining us on the YouTube. And for those, so we'll be having Patrick Hartono and Florence Toe. And for the folks in the room, we will also have a performance by Porek Freeman. Unfortunately, we will not be streaming that. So if you're watching on the stream and you're in London and you want to come check it out, please do come knock on the door if you already have your roundtable ticket. So I just want to get started and introduce our first speaker. So Patrick Hartono is an electroacoustic composer, audiovisual artist, and currently a lecturer in computational arts at Goldsmiths University of London. In this roundtable, Patrick will be sharing his recent research project on neural network-driven parametric control for generative visual systems where AI functions not as an image generator, but as a real-time controller of procedural visuals. I'm sure Patrick is going to explain and talk to us more about it. If this is your first roundtable with us, it's usually the structure is that we host a talk, and then at the very end, we'll do a quick Q&A, and then there's a break so that you have time to go grab a drink and then join us back for our second talk. So without further ado, Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thank you very much. Hi guys, thank you very much for coming. First of all, I would like to thank you for Harshini, Eclectic, Node Institute, Manifest.io, and of course to all people that involved in this event, especially my colleague, my friend, all technician behind. There is a Rob there. Owen should be somewhere. Ah, that's Rob. Owen should be over there. And of course, students and other volunteers that support our event. So my presentation today, okay, this is the presentation that I will do today. I promise myself I will try the best as possible, not talking too technical and not too conceptual. I'm trying to balance in these 2 aspects, okay? So one thing very important also, the reason why I decided to talk about this, because we are Goldsmith. Goldsmith always become the center, the space for the unspoken voices. So together with Harshini, I think it would be a really nice event to talk about this kind of different perspective on how we use computational technology, particularly in the context of art. So today, it's about transcending gender, interpreting language through machine learning, okay? So before further I go, I'm here also on behalf of my friend, all the friends that involved in our previous work that inspired this current research that we are doing at the moment. Rianto, Monica, and all the other collaborators. And the most important thing is to all my friends from Indonesia, who's now actually get really underrepresented because of political situation. We are really, really, really not at a good condition at the moment. And it's always kind of unspoken due to political agenda or any news filters in our country. So without further ado, so what is Lengger? Lengger is actually a name of dance, and it's originally from the central Java, specifically the city called Banyumasan. But there in our regions, Indonesia, we always refer to the, let's say, the province, because if you say a province, meaning like any other cities within the region of province may share kind of like similar art influence. So typically, the dancer for Lengger is male dancer, okay, in a female costume. I will start talking further why this topic become very interesting for me particularly when I start collaborating with them. So, in like any other art form in Indonesia, we don't see it as a only form of entertainment, not merely from that perspective. It's also very strong related with our rituals. Of course, it's before all the colonization happening. For example, like gamelans and any other instrument that quite known in West, it's not merely only as an instrument, but it's also become kind of like medium for specific ritual. So indeed, we can see that Lengger from that perspective. On the next year, I would like to show you, oh yeah, I have subscription for the YouTube, but when I put it on the PowerPoint, it goes to the non-subscription, so there might be a bit of ad, but I will just play back. This is the example of Lengger. It's nice. Okay. This is the example of Lengger dancer by Rianto, the maestro that I mentioned his name at the beginning. So you can clearly see this is basically like kind of like tutorial on how to do the Lengger dance, right? It's very clean, it's nice environment. I will just put forward. Yeah. However, on the next video, this is actually the actual performance of Lengger. There are two sides, of course. One you can see during the specific ritual, and one you can see during kind of like more entertaining event. And this is actually one of the example where it's go outside a bit from the ritual context. We are not sponsored by them, yeah? Okay? We are not sponsored by them.
Register to vote by the 11th of April.
I even can't release.
It's quick
press
and
skip.
easy.
Where's the skip?
Just go to gov.uk/.
It's government anyway, guys. It's government. This is kind of already at the peak of the performance, yeah? And in my experience working with them, when it's happened at this moment, it's no longer them. They all basically trance. I will explain more how they eventually get into these states of trance. Okay. So, yes, initially, this project and the project previously we did, it's actually the outcome of our collaboration. We start having the dialogue together with Rianto and with other friends, specifically Monica Lim. She is my colleague during a PhD back in Australia. So during that project, we have a lot of, let's say, engagement. However, something very important that I would like to emphasize here, Rianto, in a simple term, perhaps I'm using not a correct term, let's say I use like indigenous artists, yeah? Meaning, every single method of collaboration that I normally apply with other, let's say, professional artists or musicians, is not applied with them. There's no like planning, there is no like a very structured rehearsal, no. We need to talk. We need to build the trust, we need to build the relationship. I need to understand like he wake up like in this hour, which is never on time. Then we try to negotiate from them. And because of that, we also kind of like began to build more profound relationship in a way, trying to understanding more about how he perceives himself. So something very interesting during our collaboration is, of course, because I come from here, we use the term computational art background. Everything for me is all about the data. Everything for me is all about the coding. Everything for me is about how advanced technology. Nowadays, especially in generative visual context, we have a lot of visual, a lot of beautiful visual, right? Like a lot of beautiful visual. And up to the point, even during my teaching, I began to ask this question a lot myself. Like, we have a lot of visual, and what is the meaning behind? When I try to reflect on that, I eventually come to the idea that I discussed together with Rianto and other friends during the collaboration. Rianto always understand the idea of gender, it's something fluid, like water, like a river water. It's always endlessly, it's infinitely, endlessly flowing. But of course, because there's this difference of intellectual background, always very hard to find kind of like the same grammar or common ground to describe what is the fluidity meaning, okay? Eventually, only until, let's say, over the last few months, I began to talk again with our friends Monica Lim, because part of the project that we did, we also make a digital documentation of all the movement from Langer dancer. Why? Because Rianto, you know, the guy that I showed when he did the tutorial, is the only maestro left. No more. So after him, if there is no regeneration, no more. And because of the political situation happening in Indonesia, it's always underrepresented and certainly discriminated, you know, because all the custom and the idea of the gender. So we begin to visit this idea about fluid like water. Then I will explain to you how we can go from technical and a technical point of view. However, now this is actually the outcome of our collaboration back in Sydney, Australia, which is part of the Sydney Pride 2000 and I forget, 2023 or 24, I forget. Should be around there. So up to this point, that was actually when Rianto started talking about trans and then the idea of identity. You know, in other society, the identity, we identified ourselves, right? Whilst during the context, during the performative context of Langer, what happened is before the performance, they all need to do the ritual. Okay, they need to do the ritual. And what is the ritual for? Because they need to connect with their ancestor. Like really, really kind of like from other angle perspectives, kind of like demonic things. Yes, they do. They call the spirit. They need to even wait. So during the performance that I just showed you, I cannot start the performance. Until Rianto reached specific moment of trance. He told me that I need to wait until I heard kind of like drumming sound. He you know, we in our culture, we kind of like singing like tung ta tung 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 ta tung tung ta tung tung. Until I hear that, I know that's my indang, meaning the ancestor of him, it's coming. And indeed, during the performance, it was the first time in my life that I'm also involved at the same trance level. Guys, I spent my entire life with sound specialization since like 17 years ago. For some reason, during that moment, I heard something, sound, out of nowhere on top of me, which I know I placed the speaker there. It does not come from my computer. When that exact moment, for some reason, all the performer is just different. The facial structure is different. The expression is different. The emotion is different. It's totally become a different identity. It's totally become different entities in terms of bodies. And after the performance finished, of course, this is something that we then talk further with Rianto about his idea of this fluidity. So his idea about, of course, within the context of performance, within the context of performance, the idea of identity, so it's no longer about how I justify myself, okay? But it also has something to do with my ancestor. And therefore, in our culture, we always see something in a more holistic context. So the identity is become one when he's connected with the ancestor. That's kind of like something I'm trying to summarize from Rianto. Because, because of language things and also a kind of a different grammatic background, it's very hard. So basically that's something actually we're trying to aiming. But other than Langer, we also have different rituals, different let's say art scene. For example, from the town when I was born, it's in Makassar in South Celebes. There are 5 different gender, and then the top one, we call it bisu. Bisu is actually a person. It's not like we call it like a highest priest. Perhaps not really a correct translation, but the highest priest. And the highest priest has a fluidity identity. It's never clear enough. And again, because of modernization and technology and knowledge, it's become quite rare and it's almost gone. This is just some simple documentation about that.
This is your brain.
This one is not sponsored.
This is Sneak.
Before it was government. This one now.
Brain on Sneak.
Okay. And you see here, this is the biksu, and biksu is actually leading the ritual. And this one is from the South Celebes. So indeed, practically in our culture, we are really understanding in a more broader spectrum of identities. I will just go forward. And about trans, indeed, yes, in other cultures, especially even in a modern version of that. What I show you with Rianto, it's kind of like still using a lot of conventional traditional dichotomy and object, right? But also in the modern version and in youngster as well. For example, this is part of Jatilan, if I'm not mistaken, part of Reok Ponorogo. And yes. And this is like the shaman, and he transfer energy basically. So indeed, here perhaps people in a quote using specific substance, they transfer the energy. They're beyond. Okay? And this is another example to see more broader context. And this is common practice there. And unfortunately, due to kind of like documentation with really Indonesia, most of the example they can manage to grab, it's mostly from Java. But outside the Java is indeed more practice out like this. So based on this idea, again, we find of kind of like the embodiment and the conceptualization idea about gender in Langer. And so based on what I explained before, we believed of our team, gender should be visualized as something fluid. So now we kind of like have the homework because we have very conceptual idea, then me come from more technical background. How can we negotiate this? That's actually become quite a back and forward discussion, and we have been discussing this over the last 2 years. And eventually, for some reason, we just find out, why don't we just use this? Sorry, I will just go on the next slide so I can show you. Okay, and eventually, we can arrive into this idea. Of course, for those who come from computational background, from computing background, you guys are very familiar with this multi-layer perceptron or regression. This practice is very something normal if you do live electronic, especially after the Flucoma library was launched to public and a lot of practitioners use. However, this use of specific generative data mapping is quite rare in the generative visual community. So what it's do then, we come into the idea, we need to find a way on how we can use the motion capture data that I mentioned before. We have a lot of examples for motion capture data from the dance. But the struggle is always like, how can we use this? How can we make this data meaningful in terms of movement and also to visualize that? So based on that, what we do, especially me and Monica, because we both kind of like the more technical background in this group, we take the data from the motion capture, from the Langer itself, okay? In total, we have kind of like almost 40 gigabyte motion capture data, And if you are familiar with that, one full body motion capture data with, let's say, OptiTrack consists a lot of parameters. For example, in this context, in TouchDesigner, of course, I use the term I use some terminology from TouchDesigner here. In our motion capture data, we have 306 channel motion data. So it's a huge. Then for this specific that I will show later in my TouchDesigner, we just get one file that only consists of 18 seconds, almost 19, which is 1,000 something frame if the frame rate is 60 frames per second. So what I do then, this has actually become quite interesting. In any other application for machine learning like this, the decision mostly come from technical decision, from technical background. Here's in this context is honestly the opposite. For example, when we decided to extract the 3 macro feature instead of having like each feature from each specific explicit data, it's because the idea of these holistic things. You know, we can get, of course, like individual data for every joint, for every movement from the body, but the idea of the dance itself and the validity of the gender, it's always come as holistic perspective. So indeed, it's take a while to find, especially me. As you know, I'm a composer. I'm using the technology, but I'm not come from scientific background. So eventually, we decided to take these 3 macro feature from the data, which is the energy. Energy meaning like how powerful is the movement within frame. Velocity is the energy is total amount within one specific momentum. Velocity is the fastness. So wait a moment, I forget about this. I have my note because it's so the energy is the total amount from the all data from the entire body, which is the energy, and then the velocity is the fastness, total amount of fast between the movement of all the body, and then the last one, the acceleration, which is total fast. We calculate the total fast from all joint from all the body. So based on that, we trained the neural network, and again, this is still work in progress that we plan to publish in summer. At the beginning, the training is okay. As you can see here, this is the first one, second one, the third one. The orange one is the predicted one from the machine learning, and you can see like there's a lot of like spike jumping around, not really following the pattern. But eventually, we got this. As you can see, the blue one is the actual data from the movement that we get based on the feature, yeah? And this is just one from 100 frame, like 100 frame, because in total it's like 1,000 of frame. Then the orange one managed to somehow follow the pattern from the blue one, right? It's not a perfect one. We need basically more input, which is the entire data from the motion capture and do the running. And let me just show you to save time. Oh yeah, this is the first prediction that we did. So you can see the first one, the relationship between the motion data and the prediction is still really messed up. You can see, for example, like here, there's a lot of fluctuation, while the predicted data, it's somehow not even able to mimic the gesture, even a bit shifted. But all along the process, if I go further here, as you can see, which is actually relevant, which is actually the same data that I showed earlier, it's somehow kind of like mimicking the data. It's might a bit shifted here a bit, as you can see, but it goes down when the actual motion data actually also going down to, let's say, a minus value. So based on this, we managed to get the machine learning model. I will show after this. But then the most important part is about what is the visual you want to achieve. So initially, I was trying to use this new operator from TouchDesigner, which is the operator, but it doesn't really work well when I try to implement the Python here. So I will just use my old shader code. So what happened is I have a sign distance function, a 3D sign distance function, running on TouchDesigner. And then this parameter of all, I have around 10 parameters that I get this time for this machine learning demonstration to control all, let's say, the most important parameter on the shader part itself. And of course, it's involved a lot of data process that I will show soon in my TouchDesigner file. So to sum out a bit about this concept and idea before I go to jump practically on the TouchDesigner, here in this context of project, we try to see machine learning not only merely as specific, let's say, statistical tools, but for us, we see machine learning as conceptual bridge. And one thing very important, specifically from my perspective as an artist, my job is not about to exhibit how advanced is technology. My job is how can I conceptualize the technology based on my artistic idea. And when this happens, that's actually the momentum where the expression can actually start merging from that. Okay. So what I would like to show you now is the TouchDesigner file. You can see it, right? So let me start with this. This is the important one. This is the tracking data. Can you guys see it? Yeah, so this is basically the tracking data. Yeah. Oh, it's on my, I will put it to the middle a bit. It's better? Here, right? Yeah, we haven't really managed to time actually to put any model to it, but you can see this is actually the data. Then what I would like to do, I will just play so you can see. So this is the movement. Sorry, indeed it's a tiny bit, but you can see this small dotted, right? So that's the movement from the Langer. We get the movement, and then I can show you what happened here. So in total, we have 306 channel, okay? And from this 306 channel, of course, what I need to do, I need to clean the data. I need to find where is the standard deviation. I will try to use like normal human terminology, okay? So based on that, I'm trying to find a way to smoothing the data, to find what is the maximum, what is the lowest, what is the average, and how they actually spread between their fluctuation. And that's actually what I'm doing here. And even very simple step, what I do, I need to filter which channel actually, for some reason, technically, wouldn't activate. So I filter all the channels that by the end, when we see the file, is actually turned off for some reasons. And after that, all the file goes to this. Let me just close this. All the file goes to this macro feature. After all the cleaning data, in a simple term, getting the maximum, minimum, deviation and kind of stuff, we get into this. For those who want to have like more technical, even equation about what I'm doing, feel free to contact me. I give you all the formula, even the equation that we do here. So we have this chop execute, we get all the data, sorry. We get all the data, we get the acceleration, as I mentioned, velocity, and also the power. And then from that, I load the machine learning model here that we saved previously in Python. But in order to do that, we use this expression to activate the virtual environment outside. So I'm not really using the Python inside the TouchDesigner, but instead I'm using the virtual environment on Conda that I created. And from there, I eventually get this data. This is basically the outcome data from the machine learning. It's not perfectly aligned. We have a problem here. The main problem that I encounter is, I think this is also that I need feedback from all of you. What I did is I mostly working with the data on the Python side first before I put in TouchDesigner. So the problem that we encounter is there is a specific difference of sample because the way TouchDesigner run and also the way on native Python run. And therefore, there's kind of like inaccuracy, but at least I get something here. So this is the data, the actual data. Then this actual data, let me show you a bit. So this is the code that we use. I'm using the chop script to get the data. And basically, this is a very simple code to load all my, this is the name of my model after a few times of training. That's the model of the model. All the data that I get from the data cleaning, it's get into there. Then from there, I did a bit of post-processing because the fluctuation sometimes can become very fast, very rapid. Then I would like to slow down a bit. And then the idea of this is honestly just from the aesthetic point of view. There's nothing more than that. Then after that, everything goes, sorry, I need to kind of like close the view because it's quite heavy calculation here. It goes to the shader coding here, and all the shader coding here goes eventually to the end, which is here. If you are familiar with my, so what I would like to do is, if I stop the tracking, yeah, because now we have the tracking, we have the streaming data from the mocap happening at the moment. If you are familiar with my previous work, I actually use sign distance function in different way. I don't use the smooth step. I don't use anti-aliasing. I'm kind of like destroying the kind of like smooth sign distance function. It's just like my aesthetic. So what I will do, I will just stop the. You can see that all the intensity. This is the actual sign distance function with all tracking data. However, I can't really get 0, 0, 0 because if I, in TouchDesigner, chop is actually loading data into an array of, let's say, kind of signal, and therefore there is a bit of data that left that still feed it into the shader. But this is the actual idea of us about how we would like to visualize Langer. However, again, this is still work in progress. I will have a meeting actually with Monica and Rianto perhaps next week because Monica is traveling, Rianto also is traveling. So what I will do, I will just show this for the last time before any question, if any, I will be more than happy to answer. So this, if I play, yes, you can see that it starts shading the sign distance function. However, indeed, I need to admit the machine learning part is not that accurate, as you can see on the graph already. But this is how we achieve so far. And hopefully by the summer, during the next event that will happen here as well, if you're in London, please come. It will be on our staff show. Hopefully we will get the final version of this. The lighting part actually my favorite. It's actually come from the acceleration of the movement. That one. So, if you're familiar with shading, you can actually multiply the values by something, and therefore you get the multiplication of that, and it's just become bright. The brightness, this one, especially the brightness, it's actually come from the acceleration of the total movement from the body. Yep. I think that's all from me. I'm more than happy if there is any question, any comments, any critique. And one thing very important is, again, here I'm talking not only for myself, but on behalf of my other friends and my fellow who's working in this project. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing that.
Thank you. Really appreciate for the opportunity, really.
I was so excited because I don't think we've ever had a TouchDesigner talk that specifically dealt with the relationship between generative arts and gender fluidity.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, especially when you're working with the motion capture,
yes.
What exactly could you maybe repeat again? What exactly what parts of the body are you detecting?
Basically, all of them. I'm not really sure because I'm not the person who did the motion capture. It was Monica. Monica did, if I'm not mistaken, even including the fingers as well. So it's like the entire point of the body using OptiTrack. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions in the room or in the stream? Yes, hi.
Hello, hi. Really impressive work, and
Thank you very much.
yeah, I enjoyed the story as well behind it.
Appreciate.
I am also looking to do something with dance, more on the hip hop style, but the way I've been thinking about it is because I can track the skeleton and I can get the skeleton joint data and the values associated with that, mapping directly to some kind of a visual, adding particle effect shaders to show. What are your thoughts from an artistic point of view? And I feel like if I avoid the whole machine learning, then it would simplify the program as well. What are your thoughts on showing something like that, which is more directly related to how you move your arm and then see the reaction on the screen?
Yeah, that's actually become something I've been dealing many years even before this project, because normally we know this we call it explicit data mapping. What I have the input here, I immediately get the output here. But then when the machine learning comes, there's a lot of perspective on seeing machine learning and also AI in this context, right? You can see it from conceptual point of view, but you can also see from artistic point of view. Luckily, in my case, since I am an artist using this technology, I managed to see in those two perspectives. So in a way, what we are trying to do here, we would like to tell that data is just a data. If I do explicit mapping, of course, I can do direct relation with the output. But we're trying to see here, machine learning with all the process of learning, including iteration and everything, that actually can come out for some interesting conceptual idea. And of course, within the context of Langer, movement is not only about the movement, it's something happening there. And also, if you would like to see in a more conceptual idea about the documentation, there is a specific memory that's happening there. And that's why actually we use the machine learning, because we would like to have a part of, it's not to replace us, it's to extend our understanding, to interpret the data. If I just do the explicit data mapping, then the idea of all this, let's say, gentrification and our idea about fluidity, our imagination about how free can be the gender and how gender actually within our performance context is relevant with our ancestor, kind of like gone. So what is very interesting in this project is on how we conceptualize the idea of this technology. It's very interesting though. One last thing, maybe a bit long, but if you know C++, C++ is actually very conceptual. I've been talking this a lot in my class. C++, the idea of object-oriented programming is very conceptual in a way. There is an object, one object, but can do almost everything. Yeah.
Yes, we have one question at the back.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm very interested in that particular point that you mentioned at the beginning, at the point of contact, of channeling the ancestors through sound.
Yes.
Well, as you know, I'm really, really interested on that topic. It's part of my own research. So I was wondering, like, in the process of transducing, you mentioned movement. I also wonder if you have find a way of transducing that moment, or how would that be transduced in terms of image? Is it possible, or in sound, or what are we going to see, or is it a feel? Is it something that belongs to this aspect of your work?
My journey, honestly, we talk in the academic context, yeah? So if there's anything, we talk in academic context. My journey with generative visual getting really profound when I start using mushroom in the past. So I intentionally using mushroom so I can get out from this reality, so I can see other reality, so I can get the idea of different dimension. So when we start talk about this with Rianto, of course, there's a lot of conversation on how in our culture they do the rituals, right? One thing that I cannot really honestly offer is to have the same experience that we encountered before during that performance. Because that level of profoundness on understanding something beyond just our normal conscious, it's honestly very personal. But what we can offer is the narration behind this visual. So the visual that you see behind me is not just merely some nice glowing visual. It has something behind. And I also believe that narration in many cultures, in many forms of narrative, could become kind of like a bridge to connect with our ancestor. But indeed, honestly, during the performance of, that's actually the first time in my life I heard something not from my speaker, that I am pretty sure about that. Damn sure. Man, 100% sure. Because I make the maximum SP myself, hold the specialization. My level is 0, but there is a sound. And then uniquely, perhaps you can see the coincidence, when that sound happens, they also start the performance. I don't believe it, I come from this, PhD, all this scientific, but when I experience, yes, indeed, something is different is there.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure that the folks in the room have a
There's
chance for a
one
break.
last
But we'll take one last question, and then Patrick's around. You can talk to him.
Yes,
after.
of course, I'm around. Around.
I've just a quick question on the cultural aspect.
Yes,
'cause
please.
You're essentially capturing a moment in time which is artistically not going to be there in the future, potentially. And it's a cultural moment. So do you feel what you're doing with TouchDesigner is similar to photography at the beginning of the 1900s, like capturing a moment in time and an interpretation of it?
There is a bit similarity with the idea when the old musicology came to our country initially. When the, let's say, Yapkuns come to Indonesia and they see people play with, they call it, if I'm not mistaken, Indonesia we call it kaleng, it's Ken, Ken. They see people like playing with Ken, but they don't know yet it's actually gamelan. That's Yapkuns, that's the story of Yapkuns. So I think what happened here, it's a bit different though. Why it's a bit different? Because we have, then I'm very grateful, not all of us, of course, Indonesian, but we are very grateful that we have a certain intellectual background when using this technology. So we have the level of conscious about what data we take. And for me, that's actually what matters. So one thing also very interesting that will happen soon, I believe, due to this accessibility of equipment, similar with photography. Thank you very much for mentioning that. In the past, photography is something very exclusive. I speak a bit this with my colleague Owen, I believe, in class. Photography was something very exclusive in the past. You need to have a quite fortunate financial support to buy the camera, right? But now, you remember when the digital camera era come, it's become everywhere. It's become the mass product, but then we lose the meaning. So what happened here with the motion capture and all this effort that we do, we have a very clear conscious intellectually on what we capture and what is that meaning on this current of time and what's meaning on the future, hopefully, if I'm still around. Thank you very much for your question. It's very interesting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the questions. I love that question. We have to talk after. Thank you, Patrick, for kickstarting our first TouchDesigner Roundtable in London. What?
Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Jack Ryan on the stream says Patrick is the GOAT of Goldsmiths. So for the folks in the room, we're going to take a break now as we transition over to our next speaker. At 7, we'll be welcoming Florence Toe. So go grab a drink and then come back. And for the live stream folks, I'm also hosting and cutting the stream, so your patience is really much appreciated. Thank you again, Patrick.
Come here. Thank you very much.
Every single day? I think so, yeah. Not checking it out. I'll see you in a bit. You're not ready, you want something? I'll get you.
Different side of noise.
Hi, how are you? Hey, you too. It's been a long time. Now I'm here. I'm studying again.
Yes, I do have time with it. Let's go.
I came to the opening, remember, 2015. But not human.
We've got a civic chamber in the UK now for keep ending stuff. We're looking for a place to set it up. I mean, we have symbols, so we don't need it.
There's a lot of these, like, how many times Norwich?
Oh, really? Okay.
I know, not university.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I'm going to
Well, we modeled it after the
Where is the one that you used?
It's in storage in the farm. And Vicky Bennett has just got in touch. There's no others for the young governors to store.
I was
And so we're looking
good that you told me. So we here can look into this one.
In UK.
And then
Somewhere industrial, Bermondsey? South Bermondsey? Shoulders, where has it?
Ali said so. That's a good idea.
Where's that? What's the place?
it's like a big industrial warehouse where there was like this sort of competition. I can't remember who did it, but there was like a lot of. Yeah, where is it?
Oh, Can you hear me? I have a very bassy voice. Normal sound. Yes. Let me just seconds. Okay, let's see. Let me just, I'll do a, wait, okay. I would rather speak quietly, to be honest, rather than loud, yeah.
Do you have any audio in your...
Yes, I do, yeah.
Is it a bit too...
I think it's too high.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. And also, there's some new faces in the room. So, welcome to the TouchDesigner Roundtable and also day one of Manifest.io. This is the first time the Node Institute and Manifest.io have been in London, and I want to give a huge shout out to Eclectic for making this possible and for jumping on our crazy train of, us as a Berlin-based group coming over to London to do this symposium for 2 days and the TouchDesigner Roundtable today. So thank you so much, Eclectic. For those of you who don't know, Eclectic is an art lab, a self-funded creative platform founded in 2014 that showcases contemporary art, experimental music, and artistic critical practice. So we're super excited to welcome them as our co-curators for our first Manifest.io London. If we can give a round of applause to Eduardo and Isa from Eclectic. Great. And I also want to give a shout out. This kind of scenography that you see in the room was designed by Izzy and Shang Yu. Izzy from Portugal, who also was just found out about Manifest.io and wanted to join in, and Shang Yu, one of the students here who's also learning TouchDesigner. So thank you for building our beautiful scenography and activating the space for us. For the live stream folks, you can kind of see the wide angle shot now. I'm really excited to welcome Florence Toe. We actually know each other from Berlin. I think you were one of the first people I saw speak at a roundtable, so I'm really excited to have you back. Florence Toe is a Scottish-born artist and director with Hong Kong roots, specializing in acoustic scenographies and audiovisual installations that interrogate architectural spatial design. And Florence is going to talk more about what you do. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, and thanks to Harshini and Patrick and Eclectic and everyone that's been involved and also showing work here at Manifesto. This turned out to be at first an artist's talk, but then it's now a tiny workshop. So I hope you can learn something, and I apologize in advance if I've given you way too much information. But yeah, so I'm going to start from the beginning of how I started my practice. And I will talk about the very beginning of also how I ended up coming from textiles into audiovisual, into I'm studying at research architecture in Goldsmiths, which some of the students here today as well. And I just want to ask, who's a student here, or a student in general? Okay, who's a researcher educator? Okay, and who here uses TouchDesigner or a similar node-based application? Okay, that's perfect. Okay. So yeah, my name is Florence. I've been working as an artist since 2008. I've been producing artworks and installations in many parts of the world. I started my practice in London, and then I later moved to Rotterdam and Berlin, and now I'm back in London since last year. Here are some of my previous projects, which were mainly developed outside of the UK. I experiment with sensory arrangements to evoke emotional and psychological responses with an understanding of space and vibration. This presentation showcases my generative motion graphic and acoustic scenographies, understanding of light wave propagations, and research on interaction behaviors. I will not talk solely about my use of TouchDesigner, but I will give an insight into my practice of composition and interaction that will also show a creative understanding of how such tools can be used. I began my journey in textiles and tailoring, focusing on weaving and embroidery, and soon transitioned into designing scenographies for theater, opera, as well as directing live audiovisual compositions. While I creatively utilize technology, my foundational practice is deeply rooted in a DIY ethos, combining traditional crafts and digital tools. I've crafted sculptures and utilized projection mapping in abandoned spaces, subsequently transforming these environments for club events, exhibitions, audio installations, and underground spaces. Throughout this journey, I encountered numerous challenges that spurred my growth, particularly during the 2008 recession, which marked a significant shift in the new media industry as it is now, with financial and political strains within the arts and culture. Curiosity and understanding the scientific properties of my practice allowed me to further explore psychological triggers in cognitive and emotional behaviors within architectural space. After 2019, I began working on Illusion, a hypnotizing variation of moving images and textures that explores the relationship between movement and time, referencing scarred landscapes such as waterfalls, erosion, fluvial systems. In this current slide, the digital image has been translated into hand-etched copper plates in reference to post-industrial landscape scars caused by 20th century utopian visions of society. The scars are the contemporary challenges of living with these physical mental marks. The natural decay of copper symbolizes vulnerabilities in data spaces and landscapes, while long-lasting properties activates the endurance of archived information. I've also designed and taught workshops, mainly throughout Berlin and parts of Spain, focused on visualizing sound, emphasizing on understanding of architecture and the ability to perceive without relying on technology. These theoretical mental tools help nurture and strengthen the senses while creating a tangible sense of space. I also incorporate phonetics in my teaching, encouraging students to recognize their natural ability to produce sounds as musical expressions. Additionally, I guide them in finding methods to observe and organize their compositions by providing a structural set of rules. I don't know if anyone's been to the 4D sound system. I worked with them since 2012 up to 2018, teaching workshops and also developing audiovisual installations. And now they're primarily based in Budapest and Berlin. So my research and artistic practice involves investigating the effects of sound and light in environments and materials, exploring psychological triggers related to cognitive and emotional behaviors in architectural spaces, developing a multidimensional understanding of architecture and frequencies, researching ecological displacements and integrate multiple disciplines to facilitate multidimensional exchanges. And in this next slide, I will give an example of my use of visual language, understanding of syntax and composition. This part is quite important because I can't really use any tool, even any node-based or visual extraction unless I understand how composition works. So this is the very beginning of how I start to realize my theoretical ideas and also practice-based arts. This process of composition is the most crucial step in solving visual problems. Visual literacy is a language similar to combining words to form phrases and sentences known as syntax. Many syntacticians aim to discover the syntactic rules common to all languages. Discover the syntactic rules are common to all, sorry, I'm repeating myself, sorry. The syntactical potential of structure in the visual literacy system and investigation of the process of human perception. There are no absolute rules, but there is a great deal of understanding of what will occur in terms of meaning if we make certain arrangements of the parts to organize and orchestrate visual means. This is a real-time audiovisual performance in which text and voice emerge in a responsive dialogue between sound and generative typography. The composition is a call-and-response conversation about how information is archived, questioning the epistemological use of data, use of voice using live feedback scripts. It creates a conversation on a fictional narrative of characters and references etymology and linguistics. Sonic behaviors are all forms of vibration and communication. Sound is not merely noise, but spatial and tonal. Building relations between humans and nature's creation. Reconceiving the relationship between music and language as more than binary operations along commonly shared brain pathways. We view these cross-domain influences as a continuum, depending on how the acoustic demands align with the listener's domain of expertise, such as your native language or your music practice. Here's the first iteration of the performance, which was done in collaboration with French artist, musician, Felicia Atkinson.
Radice. I have many layers of shading where I could be either literal, metaphorical, and reimagined. Notes a conversation between archive and radical, questioning their personality and relations to their purpose.
In this video, you hear Felicia's voice triggering the text and story we had written together. It is written in traditional Chinese, French, and English, also using Audubon script, the first iteration of the Chinese language. As an audiovisual performance, the words can relate on a personal level when you read and hear the associations. This triggers something individual for the viewer, giving each a unique personal experience. I will now show some examples of how I utilize visual information. It all started with my fascination with the eye and how it absorbs wavelength information, also known as light, sound, and vibrational frequencies. I will discuss external influences and how I use this form of knowledge production to conduct my investigations. Alfred Yarbus was a Soviet psychologist who studied eye movements in the 1950s and 60s. Yarbus pioneered the study of saccadic exploration of complex images by recording the eye movements performed by observers while viewing natural objects and scenes. A saccade is a quick, simultaneous movement of both eyes between two or more phases of fixation in the same direction. In contrast, the eyes move slowly instead of in jumps. The phenomenon can be associated with a shift in the frequency of an emitted signal or a movement of a body part or a device. The first audiovisual installation I built was called Fovea. It references the eye's contrast function and questions how long we can respond to our visual perceptions and sound together. Working on the positioning and distance of light section of multiple reflective surfaces, the installation focuses on dark adaptation. Dark adaptation is the length of time the eye takes to respond to light from darkness. Fovea conducts contrasting elements of light movements and how illumination can heighten our senses. The sound shifts on the repositioning of light on each panel to create a gradually intensified live performance. The purpose of the installation was to understand how to further the average time of when the brain stops reacting to light information, which is 8 minutes. The average human brain stops reacting within that given time. Fovea was an investigation understanding how the use of perception can strengthen this time to 15 minutes. The feedback from this installation created something closer to hypnosis, where people would lose their sense of time. In other words, guiding the neurons into a consistent rhythm using a variation of temperaments of light exposure and details of sound. During the Islamic Golden Age, medieval mathematician, astronomer, and physicist Ibn al-Haytham was the first to explain that vision occurs when light reflects from an object and then passes to one's eye. Iraq-born Ibn al-Haytham argued that vision occurs in the brain, pointing to observations that it is subjective and affected by personal experience. He based his theories on the work of the Greek philosopher and physician Galen, who believed that the visual pathways originated in the anterior ventricle of the brain, where the animal spirit could interact with the visual spirit born by the optic nerves. Eventually, cell theory and other discoveries rendered this obsolete. Here is an example of light emission theory. Extra emissions are emissions from eyes to the object, which are visions that occurs when light is issued from the eyes. Intromissions are emissions from the objects to the eyes, such as to receive the light particles. Light is physically transmitted photons from a light source. For example, the sun is the light source making objects visible, such as the camera, eye, viewer is a detector. In reference to the light emission theory, I think of colors as different wavelengths of light. This is a video example of an animation using the opponent process theory. The opponent process theory states that colors coded in opponent pairs, black, white, yellow, blue, and green and red. The basic idea is that cells in the visual systems are excited by one of the opponent colors and inhibited by the other. The colors in the frequency transition in speed create an optical effect within the eyes. No effects are used in this animation. Everything is purely movement in speed and position. This was for an exhibition in 2019, commissioned with the International Iberian Nanotechnology Laboratory in Braga, Portugal. Vision is a function of light energy reaching the rods and cones in the eye, similar to the study of light behavior when detecting form and color in photonics. Photonics is a study and use of light and other forms of radiant energy. The eye is the physical receptor of light energy as it focuses on a colored object. Light passes through the retina in the back of the eye, where the photosensitive cells convert the light energy into different nerve pulses, as do optical semiconductors that use light waves to transmit and receive information. During my residency at the Nanophotonics Lab, I worked with a physicist from the laboratory, participating in several nanomaterial observation processes involving the interaction between light and matter. Nanomaterials are extremely small components, such as those that are inside your smartphone. Through continuous trial and error with applications and process in nanofabrication and microscopy, it became apparent that it wasn't just a theory of science and technology, but also an art form to realize techniques that could improve research process. This slide explores sound as frequency through the participatory installation EON, which investigates the relationships between sound, light, and architectural resonance. The installation features 11 notes based on the Earth's and Venus resonance. Using aluminium pipes, I tuned each note to an equal atemperamental scale. These planetary harmonics derive their frequencies from astrophysical parameters. The installation aims to allow participants to experience and activate these vibrations. Research in biophysics suggests that our biological systems align with the planet's frequency, but modern man-made radiation and noise disturb this natural harmony. Venus is the closest planet to Earth, and it once had a similar climate. It is technically Earth's twin planet. Both planets were formed around the same time with a rocky core and were made from the same spinning disk of gas and dust left around the sun in the solar system's early days. Venus is like the control case for Earth. They both start out with the same composition, water and carbon dioxide, but they have evolved on two completely different paths. Venus isn't the closest planet to the sun, but it's the hottest in our solar system. Combining the vibrations of both planets by measuring the levels of harmonics evolved into a 11-tone composition calculated from both Venus and Earth's planetary harmonics. When each note is played simultaneously when hitting the pipes, it reacts to the visual object, which is the optic panels, which I used LED panels for this, in terms of velocities, such as when a straight line bends into wavelength propagation. The optic panels were used as light objects to feel the intensity of the brightness in the room when more pipes were played. The public data was measured in 2017 when Earth's resonance was at its highest, and the year the installation was developed. The research came from an interest in creating a portal-like cave when we could immerse ourselves within the twin planets in the current climate uncertainty. I will now talk about the science of these planetary rotations and the further understanding of electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic fields are physical fields produced by electrically charged objects. These fields encompass both electric and magnetic components, which are interrelated and propagate as waves through space. EMS are fundamental to the behavior of electromagnetic interactions and play a central role in modern physics and technology. A magnetic pole is the area of at the ends of a magnet where the magnetic force is the strongest. Where magnet has two poles, every magnet has two poles, and the North Pole is the pole that points towards the Earth's geographic North Pole when free to move, making it crucial for navigation and compasses. And the South Pole is the pole that points towards the geographic South Pole, showing how magnets interact with each other and with magnetic fields. Understanding these poles is essential. They are fundamental to how magnets work, guiding everything from technology to everyday uses. Earth's magnetic polarity changes over time. The movement of the solid iron core and fluid outer core creates electric currents, which generate the magnetic field. Although we can directly measure the outer core, we can't directly measure the outer core, shifts in the magnetic field indicate its activity. The magnetic north has moved over 600 miles in the last 200 years. Essentially, Earth acts as a giant magnet, with magnetic field lines emerging from the south, wrapping around the planet, and re-entering into the north magnetic pole, pointing upwards in the south and downwards in the north. Many organisms, including bees and birds, use the Earth's magnetic field for orientation. Bees have receptors that help them align with the field, while birds rely on magnetoreception for migrating to warmer areas. This magnetic field serves as a guide, providing markers for their journey. Many migrating birds have a natural compass, using magnetoreception to detect Earth's magnetic field and determine direction. Like finding north, two theories explain this. One suggests magnetite in birds' beaks senses the magnetic field, while the other highlights proteins in their eyes that react to magnetic lines under specific light conditions, possibly letting birds see the magnetic field. Here's an experiment by scientists and ornithologists shifting the magnetic field and the marks of birds' feet dipping in ink, which determine the changes. When we think about the proliferation of EMF technologies, millions of devices operating in close proximity, we're not just talking about the convenience or connectivity. We're talking about an invisible infrastructure layer that profoundly impacts wildlife and our relationship to air and sky. Many animals like birds, bees, and marine life rely on Earth's natural electromagnetic field to navigate. When artificial EMS interfere, they can cause disorientation, behavioral changes, and even collapse in pollinator populations. Beyond the biological, there's also a growing clutter in the atmosphere, satellite frequency transmissions, and electromagnetic noise that disrupt scientific observations and alter how we experience and understand the sky. What was once seen as a vast open commons is now increasingly occupied, owned, and fragmented. This raises broader questions about who controls the air and whether we're accounting for that space's ecological, ethical, and cultural value. In an age of technological saturation, perhaps it's time to reimagine the air not as an empty void, but as a living relational space, shared, inhabited, and deserving of care. Evidence on anthropogenic EMF signals' impact on non-human species is still limited, since existing exposure standards are for humans only. This leaves wildlife unprotected and excludes them from the safety margins of existing guidelines, which are inappropriate for trans-species sensitivities and a different non-human physiologies. Observing migratory and non-migratory birds supports a critical understanding of diverse impacts of EMF signals. Migratory birds rely on the Earth's geomagnetic field for navigation, making them vulnerable to EMF disruptions during long-distance journeys. In contrast, non-migratory birds face chronic localized exposure to EMF pollutions in conflict zones. By comparison, this new investigation provides insights into global and local ecological impacts, magnetoreception mechanisms, and conservation strategies to mitigate the effects of electromagnetic interference on wildlife. This is just the introduction of the research I'm currently working on, and I hope to share more information as it progresses. And finally, if you're around tomorrow, please come to the show. I'll be performing these instruments. Sorry to feed you so much information. I'm sure I give you a wealth of knowledge on EMF signals, but this instrument I've built was part of my research a few years ago when I first conducted fieldwork on bird migration in Argentina. And these sculptures are called Tyrex, and I built them using metal strings, but also the tones, they're double-sided, so they can produce multiple tones at the same time. And it's fed through patch-based synthesis and is influenced on the physics of a bird's syrinx. So yeah, if you're here tomorrow at 5:45, please come by and see the show. And thank you for coming to the talk, and for Manifesto, Harshini, Patrick, Eclectic for inviting me. And please stay in touch if you want to work together, workshops, commissions, or if you've got a job, I'm free. Yeah, and you can scan the QR code. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Florence. I'm sure there are questions in the room. Also, live stream folks on the YouTube, feel free to drop your questions. I'm following that too. Do we have any questions in the room? Yes.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. It was super interesting. I was just wondering if you do any work with data sonification, like turning data from bird migrations or the data that you gather from looking at the relationship between EMF signals and ecology. Do you use that in your artworks as well, or is that part of like a future research project?
I think it's part of the stages of the research I'm working on. It's the very beginning, but I've been thinking about using civilian data. So we have like these amazing bird tracking apps like Cornell does, and you can actually trace where the birds are going and if they're lost, because I originally came across this research when I was in La Plata, and I was in Jujuy in Salta, Argentina, And when I was doing some field recordings, I was near some radio towers, and all the recordings I had, I mean, you don't really capture the radio signals, but I came across some birds that were lost, and it was near a mountain, and it's not far from the jungle near Brazil. So they were lost. They went over the mountain because the signals had altered their direction, and that's what urged me to sort of look more into it. And then also the clutter in the sky and where these signals come from. But yeah, definitely using like civilian source data. It's the only way really to broadly conduct the investigation.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Great. Florence will actually be performing tomorrow in this space, in the G05. I'm super excited to see your performance unfold. And I have a huge, massive respect for you, because you were really one of the first like touch designer folks that I met, and also one of the few that has actually been speaking about also like the current political situation, and it's been really wonderful, because I think we need more voices in the touch designer world to also be outspoken. So thank you, Florence. Can we give Florence a round of applause, please? I want to plug in before we take a break. I want to plug in that the Touch Designer Roundtable is made possible is an initiative by the Node Institute. The Node Institute is a hub for creative computation based in Berlin, but they actually do touch designer classes amongst many other things, even cables and V4, all online. So if you fancy getting yourself into this world, if all of the incredible stuff that you've seen so far inspired you, feel free to look up the Node Institute that just released their summer season of courses. For the next phase now of our night, we will have Porrick Freeman. So at this point, in a moment, I will say goodbye to the live stream as we move on to a performance to close the night. And then afterwards, we will be joined by Make Amplify, who are doing a dome projection in the church hall. So for the live stream folks, I'm sorry that you're not here with us IRL, but Make Amplify is a studio based in Brighton that create immersive experiences, and they'll be having a dome projection mapping session afterwards. So if you want to go out and play and also check out all the works in the exhibition, I encourage you to do so. For now, we take a break, and then we're back with Porrick Freeman at 8 p.m. Yeah.